Get ready for the heresy, because I'm telling you, if you want to give up your alcohol addiction, the AA method is not the way to go. Consider this a declaration of war, AA, and stay tuned and I'll tell you why. My name is Charles Hurst. I used to be a chronic stage alcoholic. It was really awful in the final years. The last few years of my addiction, I existed in hell. One day, I decided to quit, and that was hell too, but it is now over. I passed 10 years of sobriety and am still sober to this day. I'm not an alcoholic anymore. The above excerpt is the shot I'm firing over the bow at Alcoholics Anonymous. It was from the final lines of my work, the small book, How I Beat Alcoholism and Why Alcoholics Anonymous Doesn't Work. I wrote my first draft at 5 years sobriety and published the book at 10. I am now well over 15 years clean from my friendship with John Barleycorn. I thoroughly reject the AA philosophy due to their dismal long-term failure rates. Simply put, most who enter the doors of the rooms do not remain sober, and the ones who do are now psychic slaves to what I believe has become more of a cult than a recovery program. Because if one is spending 5 to 6 nights a week inside of an AA meeting at 5 years sober, then a psychological addiction has replaced the physical one. The Alcoholics Anonymous program is neither physically nor mentally healthy. The one who indoctrinates himself into their methods will believe his being to be forever diseased, an eternal addict, someone who is sick. The fact is, when one is in the active stages of being an alcoholic, their body is diseased during that time, whether the period lasted for 5 years or 25. And the body and mind seem certainly ill during the withdrawal, the protracted withdrawal lasting up to 2 years. But once that neurochemistry has rebalanced itself, you are no longer ill. It is true that you can become ill again if you pick up that bottle again, but you don't need 12 steps, nightly meetings, and a sponsor with his incessant mantras to stay sober. You need one step. A contract with yourself that you will never touch the offending substance again. If you lose your job, you don't touch it. If a close family member dies, you don't touch it. If you lose your house, wife, assets, and are sitting on a street corner, then sit on it with a cup of coffee. That's the mental resolve. You end forever that relationship with JB. No long-term relationship, no short-term, no one-night stands or situationships. That entity is out of your life forever. These are episodes that will resonate with some and will not with many others. Many from the AA community, as my words are the ones largely of a heretic who pontificates during their nightly sermons. They will claim how many have been helped by AA. Well, their failure rate shows otherwise, and how much they have helped the ones who remain in the rooms is a matter of great debate. They claim it is the most successful program to date. There's only one study I've read from Stanford that concurs with that claim. All other addiction studies seem to point otherwise. The day-to-day fact is the AA protocol is largely unsuccessful for most long-term. Look at the rehabs that are founded on AA principle. The first thing they tell the inpatients is, look to the left and right of you. That's how many won't make it. That's just great. I began to notice that the AA mantras largely resemble that of a fundamentalist cult. I should know, as I am a former Christian, now unspecified theist, who has a relatively successful channel that researches and exposes Christian apologist claims as legitimate or not. But the responses I would get were, you were never a true Christian. Your faith wasn't strong to begin with. They never actually looked at the evidence, or lack thereof, that I presented in my episodes. The reaction was the same snarl I received from the AA propagators you will see in the comments in the video arena. You were never a real alcoholic. Oh, you're an expert who went to 2 meetings. But they never inwardly examined the painful fact that for the most part, for the majority of those trying to gain sobriety, they fail. I wasn't an alcoholic, really. Unlike the AA regurgitation of your story every night, I will tell it once and once only. For this endeavor isn't about living in the past, but how to progress your life in the future. A clean living life, a healthy and fulfilling life, a life filled with peace and tranquility, not a life of fear from being too far from the closest room, the life where you are in constant anxiety of, I'm sober today but don't know about tomorrow. For the recovered individual knows he will be sober tomorrow, next week, next year, and for life. My story was typical. Many times the status of a future alcoholic results from past turbulent upbringing. Terrible parents, bullied in school, the micro and macro traumas that are inflicted on a select few. And one day, usually a very youthful day, a stranger named John Barleycorn knocks on your door and offers you refuge. That's how it began for me. Although I had resolved being a target by my late teens through bodybuilding, the beginnings of martial arts, and the basic self-taught ability to stand up for myself, the anguish from youth remained. I had great physical confidence by 18, but no internal fortitude. I had no ability to date, that ingrained anxiety serving as a repellent to the opposite sex. So JB gave me the numbing agent, and then he offered a lifetime supply of it. And I continued on. I pursued arduous endeavors. I joined the military, then joined a long-range radio reconnaissance team that fell out of airplanes and carried 100-pound packs. I evolved from traditional martial arts to full-contact boxing and Thai boxing. Getting a girlfriend was no longer a problem. I even managed to gain that diploma as a physical therapist. But by now, John Barleycorn was not only a close friend, but traveling companion wherever I went. Alcoholism progresses in stages. During my first attempt in college at 18, it was strictly a weekend thing, and a lot was only 8 beers, which would leave me wrecked the next morning. In the military, it was weekends, sporadic through the week, and heavily post-training exercises. Seemed normal, as all the team members drank as par for this hardcore lifestyle. Sure, we get smashed one night, but then run 6 to 8 miles the next morning. Normality is relative depending on your surroundings. One of those team members is a late-stage alcoholic today. A lot of guys in the military, like guys in college, binge drink during that time and leave it once that time passes. It seemed that way to myself as well. When I returned to college at 27, I kept the drinking to 4 beers one time during the week, then a 6-pack on the weekend nights. And it appeared I was doing well, as I was making the grades in the pre-med courses to attain entrance into physical therapy school. What I didn't understand until a decade and a half later was although I had all this physical prowess, had no problem getting a girlfriend, and seemed to be advancing into a prosperous career, I hadn't solved the long-time trauma of youth. JB was solving it for me. Or so it appeared as so. He had the door halfway open and was waiting to force his way in completely. And it happened during spring break of my freshman year, 1996. I visited an old team member who was still in the Army and taking a language course in Washington, D.C. I was out of classes, so for some reason just decided to drink every night. A lot. I figured I'd return to the sporadic binging once I got back to campus. The problem was I didn't. Not this time. That's when John Barleycorn stormed my gates. Suddenly the switch was pulled. For from that point on, I drank every night, minus a few exceptions, until I quit it for good at age 40. I drank steadily and a lot through sophomore year. I drank my way through physical therapy school. Don't get me wrong, I studied like everyone else, but unlike everyone else, I was in the bottle, and usually 6 or 8 of them after I closed the books. I still wonder if it wasn't a minor miracle that I graduated at all. And then the quantity simply progressed. That nightly 6 to 8 beers became 12 to 15 those last 2 years or so. I had largely stopped exercising. I woke up feeling god-awful, threw coffee and Gatorade to counter the effects, got through my patient load, and continued the cycle the second I got home, after stopping at the liquor store, of course. Then on January 22nd, 2009, I stopped. I had about 6 or 7 cans of liquid hops in me when I did, somewhere around 10 or 11 that night. I looked in the mirror and saw a face that was flushed and haggard at 40 years old. I had 3 unopened cans left in the refrigerator. I threw them away, and I made that lifelong contract to never open one again. The withdrawal is as bad as the movies portray. Those first 5 days I thought I had died and gone to hell. The next 30 or 40 days were awful as well. I'll have episodes in the very immediate future on how I got through the stages of recovery to my 2-year cure mark, but it's safe to say that it was no easy journey. But here I am today, that dark voyage long concluded, and I am well over a decade and a half sober. So I think it's fair to say, AA, that I was indeed once an alcoholic. At 11 months sober, I went to 2 AA meetings at 2 different locations in the course of 2 weeks. I was still in the long, protracted withdrawal phase and wanted to see if AA had anything to offer. My brother was also a once alcoholic who spent a significant amount of time in the room, so yes, AA, I did have some familiarity with your program outside of my 2 direct encounters. He's sober today, by the way, now 20 years clean, and left the rooms behind long ago as well, because the experience can be described as nothing less than toxic. I'll have episodes in the future on the specifics of that toxicity and why they are toxic and actually are keeping people from full recovery. In the minority who do manage to abstain, they are trapped in the rooms, the mantras, surrounded by fellow cult members. Their entire lives are dictated by their, quote, disease. They lose spouses who no longer have anything in common with their continuous dependence on working the program. They live in constant fear of being too far away from the rooms, returning to them immediately when life throws that normal wrench into the machine. Their lives are never recovered. They have been hijacked by AA, and AA doesn't even have the success rate to justify these kidnappings of those souls in turmoil. I'm not saying the founding of AA wasn't a good thing in its time. Bill and Bob addressed a problem that had never been addressed, but the program should have been greatly modified over the years. Like competitive bodybuilding of my old days, there were exercises we did in the 1980s that we know are harmful to the joints and lumbar, so we changed them. AA refuses to not only modify their program into one of healthy, holistic recovery, but continues to ignore the simple fact that for most, the program fails. So now I'm declaring war on them. I have posted the first 3 episodes at once with video versions on other platforms, so you don't have to wait to begin the path of recovery. Yes, I have inexpensive books on why AA doesn't work for most and how to reinvent your life. You can buy the books, or if you collect enough blog and video episodes, eventually you'll get the same information for no cost. Because my hope is to free as many people from addiction as I was freed long ago. If you want to spend your life hanging out in the rooms, smoking cigarettes, guzzling coffee, and infusing sugar into your system while you regurgitate night after night how bad your former life was and how powerless you are over your prior offending substance, then so be it. But you won't have the recovered life you could. But if you want to learn how to truly reinvent your life, then stay here, because I will teach you not only how to live healthily, but how to reconstruct all of your planes, the physical, emotional, and spiritual, to advance to a life where you rarely think about the past one or your former friend John Barleycorn at all. Now, playlists for stages of recovery are at the end of the video, and check out my much more detailed work, The Small Book, How I Beat Alcoholism and Why Alcoholics Anonymous Doesn't Work. Links are on the video description as well as a channel page banner. And remember, keep that contract with yourself, be sober at sundown, and I will see you at the next sunrise.